In this video, we'll be taking a look at the information on pages Word 64 and 65, which is entitled Add Borders and Shading. Borders and shading can add color and a splash to a document. Borders are lines you add above, below, to the side, or around words or paragraphs. You can format borders using different line styles, colors, and widths. Shading is a color or pattern you apply behind words or paragraphs to make them stand out on a page. You apply borders and shading using the Borders and Shading button in the Paragraph group on the Home tab. Now, step 1 on page Word 64 tells us to hit our Control and Home key, and that's going to take us back up to the top of the document. And then we're going to scroll down until where we see this grouping of tab text, and we want that to be at the top of our screen. Step 2 tells us that we want to select the 5 paragraphs of tab text on there. So we're going to select this entire grouping of tab text here. And then we're going to click on the shading list arrow in the paragraph group on the Home tab. So here's our paragraph group. And if we take a look here, there's a button that has a little picture of a paint bucket on it, and that is the shading. And of course that's going to change the color behind the selected text. Now if we click on the list arrow right here next to that button, notice that we have our selection of colors here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select the green accent 6 lighter 60%. And of course that is going to be over here in the greens. And of course, once again, you can always just put your mouse pointer over this and it will give you the screen tip that tells you what color it is. But we're going to choose this one right here, and this is the green accent 6 lighter 60%. When we click on that and deselect the text, you'll notice that there is some shading behind this text, which is now the light green shading behind these paragraphs. Now notice the shading is applied to the entire width of the paragraph despite the tab setting. So it's going to go from margin to margin is where that's going to go. So you'll have to understand that when you use the shading on a group of text, it will go margin to margin. Unless you're using something like tables or something like that, in which it will focus in primarily on just a cell. On step 3, we're going to once again select the 5 lines of tab text here. And then we're going to drag the left indent marker, and once again that is the box that is underneath these 2 arrows right here. But we're going to drag this left indent marker to the 3/4 inch mark on the horizontal ruler. So we're going to click on this and drag this over to 3/4 of an inch. Then we're going to release our mouse button. And then next, we're going to go over here to the right-hand margin, and we're going to grab the right indent marker, and we're going to drag this to 5 3/4 inch. And then of course we're going to deselect our text. Now, when you apply indentions, like we've talked about previously in our series of videos, that will actually reduce down the amount of shading that is in the area behind where we've selected. And of course, the shading will go from one indention to the next, or it'll go from one margin to the next if there's no indentions. And of course, this just makes it look a little bit more attractive and makes it stand out just a little bit more than having the shading go from margin to margin. On step 4 on here, it wants us to once again select the 5 paragraphs here. So we're going to select this again. And then next what we're going to do is we're going to click on the bottom border list arrow in the paragraph group. And that is the button directly to the right of the shading button, and this is the borders button. When we click on this list arrow, it gives us some of the different options. Of course, if we want to be more specific, we can always choose the borders and shading button down here, which will bring up the borders and shading dialog box. However, in this case, we want to select outside borders. So when we click on that, and then we're going to deselect the text. Now, a black outside border has been added around the selected text. The style of the border added is most recently used border style, which, if you have not, it's a default style for us. And of course, this is the default, which is a thin black line. On step 5, it tells us that we want to select the 5 paragraphs again. And the real reason why we're selecting and deselecting is so that we can actually see the text and how it appears. So these groups of paragraphs, we want to see really how it looks without having that shading applied to it, of the highlighting, I should say. But on step 5, we're going to go through here, and once again we're going to click on the outside borders list arrow. Now this was the borders list arrow earlier, but once again it still is the borders list arrow, but generally this button takes multiple names. Whatever the last used border was is going to be the name of the area. And of course once we click this, of course we come up with our little menu again here, and this time we're going to click on no border. And of course that will take away the border that we had previously. And then next we're going to click on the no border list arrow. Once again the button's name changes depending on what is on the inside of it, which if we primarily if you would like to put this as a general name, this would be the general borders button. But if we click on the list arrow again, we're actually going to go down to the borders and shading. Now in this case the borders and shading dialog box is going to open up, and you use this, or you use the borders tab I should say, to change the border style, color, and width, and to add boxes and lines to the words or paragraphs. In step 6 it tells us that we want to click on the box icon, which is over here underneath the setting. We click on box, and that is going to apply a top, left, right, and bottom border. Then next we're going to choose a style on here. So we're going to scroll down the styles list here until we see a double line style, and that is this one right here. So when you see a double line here, you want to go ahead and click on that, and notice that it goes ahead and applies it over here. Now this is our preview area in which you can tell a little bit about what the border is going to look like. Then next we're going to go through here on the color, where it says automatic, which black is the automatic color. We're going to choose a blue accent 5, darker 25%. So here's some of our blues, and these are the blue accent 1s. So we need to go over here to the darker blues, and these are our blue accent 5s. We're going to go down here, and there's lighter 40%, and right here is the darker 25%. That's the color we want to use, is this one right here. So we're going to click on that to select the color, and of course notice in the preview the color is going to be selected. And then finally we're going to go through here and we're going to click on the width options, and this is the width list arrow, and we're going to choose 1 1/2 point. And of course that's just going to make it a little bit thicker on there. And of course remember the points are the same thing as the font. Each point is 1/72 of an inch. Then once we have all those changes made, we're going to click on OK. And of course now a 1 1/2 point dark blue double line border has been added around the tab text. In step 7, it tells us that we once again want to select our 5 lines or 5 paragraphs on there of tab text, and this time we're going to click on our bold button. So we're going to apply the bold attribute to this text. Then next we're going to change the font color, so we're going to go over here to the font color, and we're going to click on the font color list arrow, and that brings up our color palette here, and we want to choose the blue accent 5 25%, which that's one that we had as the border color as well. So we're going to click on that and deselect our text, and we can take a look here, and so now all the text has been bold and is now dark blue. The final step on page Word 64, step 8, tells us that we want to select the first line of the tab text, and so we're going to select the trips, date, and cost. Once we do that, we're going to click on the launcher button in the font group, and that's going to bring up the font dialog box. Now you want to make sure that the font tab is the one that is active, and if it's not active you want to go ahead and make sure that you click on this to make this the active tab. And then what we're going to do is we're going to enlarge the font to size 14. So we're going to go over here to the size, and we're going to increase that to 14. And then we're going to go back to the font color, and we're going to change the font color on here from this dark blue, and we're going to change this to green accent 6 25%. And that is this color right here. So we're going to select that. And of course you'll notice in the preview that is roughly what the color is going to look like. And then after that we are going to put an effect in on this text, and we're going to add in these small caps. So if we click on this, each of the letters is going to appear to be a capital letter on there, but however, there's still upper and lower case. You'll still notice that the T here is a little bit bigger than the R, I, and P. So all of them will look like capital letters, but there's still going to be the capital letter, which is going to be a little bit larger, and then the lowercase letters are going to appear to be capital letters, but they're going to be smaller. Then next, once we have that, we're going to click on OK to accept our changes, and then we're going to click and deselect. And we'll now notice that the text in the first line of the tab text has been enlarged and changed to green small caps. Now, when you change the text to small caps, as we said before, it's going to have it appear to be in all capital letters. And of course, this just makes it stand out just a little bit more, and this kind of brings an attention to this area of the document. And of course, go ahead and make sure and you save your document. Now, on page Word 65, you can take a look at the yellow boxed area underneath the figures, and you see that it talks a little bit about the highlighting tool. And of course, the highlighting tool allows you to mark and find important text in a document. Highlighting is a transparent color that is applied to text using the highlight pointer. And of course, to highlight text, you can click the text highlight color list arrow, which that is where we see the A, B, and it looks like a little marker here with a line underneath it. Now if we click on this, we notice that our mouse pointer changes to the highlight pointer on there. Now of course, we can always choose a different color of highlighted text, which there's a few less options as what you would typically have. But then when you want to highlight the text, all you do is select the text you want to highlight, and then there is the highlighting on there. And of course, you can always remove the highlighting as well, just by pointing at the list arrow and choosing no color, and then highlighting or selecting the text that you would like to remove the color from. Now, highlighting prints, but it is used most effectively when used on the screen. So this will print if we do leave it on there. It's not like the formatting marks, which does not print. So this will print, but generally you want to use that sparingly on there. And that concludes the information on this video in which we were discussing adding borders and shading on pages Word 64 and 65. You are ready to move on to the next video in which we're going to be talking about inserting online pictures.